Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Shift Show, where we help ambitious professionals navigate the changing world of work with confidence and clarity. And I'm Rachel Bourne, your host. Today, I'm so excited to dive into a new mini series where we pull back the curtain on processes, how people are selected for roles, maybe executive compensation, answering your questions. And today, I'm privileged to have on the show with us Mike Bergen from Kingsley Gate. Mike is not just an expert in executive search, which is one of kind of the top DM'd questions that I get. He's one of the few people who can really pull that curtain back, help us see behind the scenes from some of the biggest search firms in America, and really help us understand what happens behind those closed leadership doors and how decisions are made. Mike, welcome to the Shift Show.
Well, Rachel, thank you for having me. Really happy to be here. So, I am an executive search consultant, and I've been doing that for about 26 plus years. And started my career as a human resources professional with large branded companies, GE and Citibank specifically. I'm now, for the last 7 plus years, part of Kingsley Gate. Kingsley Gate is from it's been around for about 10 years, and really was established to focus on disrupting the executive search industry. And those of us that came to the firm sort of had a common set of beliefs that executive search as an industry had really not kept up with the times, specifically around technology and science. And so we wanted to join a firm that was committed to trying to create some disruption in that space. So my job at the firm, to actually wear two hats today. One is leading the global human resources practice. So I place the majority of the searches I do are chief HR or chief people officer searches, and then a number of other senior level HR functional leaders, divisional geographic HR leaders. And then my second hat, which takes up at least half my time, is leading global markets for the firm. So that is building out the relationships across borders and taking a look at global accounts and organizations, clients where we'll do work and historically may have a great relationship with that particular company in one particular market or region, but we haven't done a good job of extending that relationship and helping them understand our capabilities beyond the home region, if you will, where they're used to working with us. So I base out of New York. I live actually part time down in Southwest Florida, and I also spend time at a house in Italy. So that is
Oh,
me.
nice. That's fantastic. You really are living and working across borders too.
I am for sure.
That's fantastic. Well, I will tell you, part of why I invited you, and I should mention to the audience, like this is not sponsored, as well. Just you guys had a great candidate experience that I particularly went through, and I loved kind of that disruption arc that you all have been focusing on. So, with 26 years in the industry, I'm really interested to know your perspective. How is this definition of great leadership evolving?
Big
I know
question.
I
Loaded
went right. I went
question.
big right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Where to even start on that one? Look, I think that the today's leader in most organizations has to be able to show up and understand how to navigate change and disruption. And so,
Mm,
as I think about the evolution of leaders, we go from a CEO often and historically being defined as the person that had all the answers, right? The one that could solve all the problems and led by example and in all aspects of the role. That's morphed quite a bit, right? To the point where um, leaders have to be self aware enough these days and have the humility to admit that they don't know it all. There are just too many moving parts, if you will. And then make sure they're surrounding themselves with people who fill in those gaps, right? So it's important for somebody, a leader, and we're being asked by our clients to find leaders who sort of bring that resilience almost, right? They know how to kind of redefine and reinvent themselves and the organizations that they're leading. They've sort of been able to put aside the rigidity of always using the blueprint that worked yesterday, right? You think about some of the things that are hitting leaders these days, AI, for instance, right? Everybody's talking about it. dramatic changes on how things get done. So, if I take an HR leader, let's pretend it's a head of talent for an organization, and they for years, if not decades, have been in a company where there's been a very prescribed way of hiring. Let's say it's entry level talent off
Mhm.
college campuses, right? Because it was very clear what that pool of talent would do for that company. Um, with AI, there's a dramatic change to that expectation, right? Now got to redefine, who do we want to hire and what are we going to have them do if we do hire them? Because AI is going to end up covering a lot of the things that they may have done in the past. So, I think it's that resilience, that being able to reinvent yourself,
Mhm.
bringing the humility and the self awareness that are defining great leadership today. Um, the last thing I'll say, Rachel, is there's no longer an emphasis on just the internal aspects of what that leader is doing, right? Everything is connected these days. So we're finding companies that tell us, hey, we're looking for somebody that is connected, that knows how to be stay very connected to the outside world, the external market, if you will, right? That poor decisions within companies are often reflected and reflected very quickly externally and publicly, right? And so
Interesting.
it's led to this sort of loss of faith, quite frankly, for people in general around leaders, whether they're in government or in companies, and so that awareness that the decisions they make and the things they do in an organization aren't just going to have impact internally.
That's super interesting. Do you feel like, especially with your lens focused on HR, too, about 40% of the audience are HR professionals. Do you feel like the expectations for HR are changing in a different or unique way
Yeah,
related to that?
I absolutely do. It's
Mm,
look, as mentioned, I've been in the HR space for many years. The first 10 as an HR professional, and so it sounds like a lot of your audience are doing things that I had done many years ago. And then my
absolutely. Yeah.
focus is almost exclusively when I do search work with clients, it's to find HR talent. I've
Yeah.
seen this sort of evolution over the years. If I go back to my early days at GE, the concept of being an HR business partner was not really a thing, right? We called ourselves generalists, and
Mhm.
then there was this very conscious decision to equip HR professionals with the financial acumen, the understanding of the business, being able to show up as a strategic business partner, right? Um, that change is still occurring, I think, in some organizations. It's been a long
Agree.
evolution. Yet, you fast forward to today, and I don't want to harp too much on the AI piece, but technology disruption in general, the digital strategies that have to exist for within people organizations, and the HR talent being able to help organizations change how that workforce operates and the kind of workforce you want to hire and how you want to train those people and what you want them focused on. Absolutely demands a totally new set of skills, right? I quick story on that. I moderate a lot of events globally, and we put these events on to sort of share thought leadership across different markets. And I was in Dubai a couple months ago, and we had a panel discussion.
Nice.
The audience were HR professionals, CHROs, senior level people across the Middle East, and one of our panelists was the head of Deloitte's Middle East technology um, uh, transformation practice, if you will, and then we had a couple CHROs as well. Um, the topic was AI transformation and disruption of the workforce,
Mhm.
uh, and I looked out in the audience, and as they were listening, and then they started to ask questions, I would say that probably 80% of that audience were deer in the headlights, right? They didn't know
Really?
how they were going to be able to sort of get their arms around what this new ask was for them as HR professionals. So there's this continuous learning, this sort of intellectual curiosity that I think HR people have to show up with and constantly kind of learning new things, right?
Yeah, it really it makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like the rate and pace of change has picked up?
Yeah,
So,
dramatically.
where do you feel like it's going? So, if you were gonna hire a CHRO today versus maybe even in 5 years, what do you think is gonna change between now and then? This is Mike's forecast of the future.
Yeah, look, I think uh, my clients today are starting most of the time with find me somebody who understands how to drive transformation. Transformation comes in all shapes and forms, of course, but somebody who understands how to manage change, right? Um, my clients are asking for HR professionals that can understand the business, can show up with a point of view on things that have perhaps nothing to do with the human capital element, right? Whether it's the being able to look through a financial lens, a commercial lens, an operational lens, a technology lens, in addition to the HR component. I think that's only going to get more pronounced as we move forward. Again, technology will reinvent how we do HR work, and if you don't want to get left behind, and you're in this workforce 5 years from now, you've got to embrace that now, right? Be on the front end of learning that because, first of all, you're going to be asked to help um, with transforming and educating that workforce on how to embrace the technology. So, if you haven't done it yourself, then you're probably not going to be prepared to help other employees do so.
Let's get into so one of the things that we're doing with this, mini series is kind of pulling back the curtain, and I will tell you, I have fielded more questions probably even in the last 6 months about, like, "Rachel, hey, tell me how does executive search work? Like, how do you get to meet these people and, what works there?" The other one I get a lot of questions are on is compensation, which has been interesting and
Sure.
surprising to me. Walk kind of the audience through, like, when you get a call from a client, what starts to happen? There's just so much misinformation out there. I think it's important to set the record straight a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. So, if when we get the call from the client, step one for us is absolutely starting the conversation around understanding what their business objectives are, what the strategy is for the company, what the current team looks like, what some of the leadership gaps and needs are. We do that often by coming on site. That's our preference, right? Because it becomes three-dimensional at that point rather than a two-dimensional video or one-dimensional phone conversation. Um, and it's about learning what the culture's like. What's the work environment like? At the end of the day, us becoming an extension of that client is really the goal. Becoming the extension of them in the talent market, I should say. And by the way, we actually love clients that are open to us telling them that what they think they need is not really what they need, right? And that
Oh,
may
I
sound
love that.
it may sound arrogant, but it's the reality, right? We are in the market 24/7 focused, and we all have our areas of expertise. So if you take me, I'm helping to companies find chief people and chief HR officers every day, all day, right? And so when I've got a CEO or board that comes to me and says, "Hey, we need a new chief people officer," they most likely have not had to fill that job in probably years, right? And so they're not going to be sort of plugged into what are the trends, what are the best practices, the benchmarks that exist out there. When they're willing to listen and have us push back on some of the things that they think they need to be prioritizing that perhaps they don't, or vice versa, that to us is refreshing. We don't believe in transactions as much as we believe in holistically helping our clients to sort of take that opportunity, quite frankly, to take talent to the leadership that they bring into a role to the next level. So for us, the starting point is kind of getting that kind of broad, holistic view of the organization. Then we get into, you know, executing on the search, if you will, right? So for us, that includes a lot of technology, as I mentioned on the front end. We've got a lot of automated software tools that help us source, sort of find those A players in a much shorter period of time than historically search firms have done. We also have some bespoke technology that provides us with sort of the real data in real time that helps us map how various talent profiles might operate successfully or unsuccessfully within the context of the organization and the team that they're going to join. So there's some tools on the front end that we'll use to help measure and define what that is, and then we
Oh,
look for
that's
the alignment, right?
so is that
Um,
like an assessment or is it a resume-based kind of profile? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
no, it's a great question. Well, first of all, it's a combination of a couple things. I wouldn't call it an assessment per se, because some of the tools that we use aren't about saying, "Hey, you either have it or you don't." It's more about defining what makes you successful, right? So one of the things, as an example, that we focus heavily on is defining what we call decision making profile for the candidates that we bring up. So we sort of went out to the market. This is probably 4 years ago now, and we went out, and we worked with the Financial Times, it's a business called FT Longitude, and they'll go out and they'll do surveys and help you, sort of understand, different realities in the market. So we said, "Look, our starting point is we want you to help us figure out what makes, executives, senior level people, when they move into new jobs, what either makes them successful or what makes them derail, what makes them not succeed. We don't know what that answer is, so perhaps you can help us find out." So FT Longitude partnered with us, went out, surveyed 400 plus executives globally, um, came back, and we were shocked that um, the answer to that question pointed very directly to how decisions are made and whether an executive who steps into an organization, the way they make decisions as a leader, does that align with what the expectations are for that company in that role? Does it align with culturally how leaders are expected to make decisions in that organization? Where it didn't align, there was a very high rate of being unsuccessful, right? Where it did align, high probability of success. So that's just one of the tools that we'll use, and we love it when our clients on the front end are open to having both the hiring leader. Let's pretend that's a CEO, and that CEO's leadership team, other direct reports, take that same tool, right? And so then we can actually map out on a grid, and we have definitions
The whole
behind
team?
different scores, the whole
Uh,
team, right? And
love
so
it.
if
Yeah.
we're trying to add an executive onto that team, again, let's use the chief HR or chief people officer as an example. Um, it helps immensely if we understand where the team sits today, and
Mhm.
then we're able to, with every candidate we present, show how they're going to show up. What does their decision making profile look like? A lot of
Oh, I
times
love that.
it's, Rachel, it's less about, hey, this knocks a person out. Rarely is that the case. It's an added piece of data to consider, and where it's very useful is when we are helping that organization to assimilate that person to the company and into the role. Having the knowledge that, hey, this is how they're going to show up is helpful. So there are no surprises, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you bring up, like, this sort of team-based nature of work today too, right? You mentioned the individual before, but I think candidates, when they don't go through a process and they don't understand kind of all that goes into it, they receive it as, "I wasn't good enough," right? When they're an unsuccessful candidate, but a lot of times it's really about what does the organization need, the fit,
Yeah.
and even the team dynamics, which I think are they don't think about that. They're thinking it from it as an individual, which is also why the job hunt is so hard and
Yeah.
emotional for some people.
Yeah, it's funny. Those are tough conversations for me to have, right? When the runner up asks me, what was I missing, right? Or where did I not do well? That's rarely an issue, right? If you've made it to be a finalist in a search process, it's usually really nuanced, right? And quite frankly, a lot of times it comes down to the chemistry, especially at that senior level. chemistry with the leader that you're going to work for, chemistry with the team that you're going to work with. So it's that's a tough one, and I think sometimes people are too hard on themselves.
I agree completely. Have well, and I didn't mean to derail your story of kind of what happens. You guys are using all this technology really on the front end to find the right candidate pool.
Yes, we are, but what I wanna be very clear about is, the human element is so important, right? I don't think personally, I don't believe it. I don't believe most people that do a lot of hiring believe that technology will ever completely replace the need for people that, can, bring judgment to the table, bring good evaluative data to the table, right? There's something to be said for just meeting somebody face to face and being able to, if I've met that CEO client, for instance, and I know how they sort of operate, I know what they like to talk about, how they, how they sort of socialize over a meal, and then I meet the candidate. It's that sort of extra sense of being able to understand, yeah, you know what? They're gonna get along well, right? They've got things in common. They like the same, kinds of restaurants. They have similar hobbies or families. That sounds shallow, but it's really not if you've sort of done the upfront work around evaluating the things like skills and experience and leadership competencies, and decision making, as I've added. That chemistry piece often is that tiebreaker. So the human element is a big part of what we do. We spend a lot of time. I like to typically do a full interview that, if it's video based, fine. I ideally like to then have a second follow up where I'm meeting somebody in person, sometimes over meal, which can be helpful.
Yeah, I know that makes a lot of sense. So, is there any other things that you feel like the audience needs to know just kind of in terms of that process, like going through and tell us a little more about kind of that behind the scenes or even that engagement with the managers, coaching them through the process?
Yeah. Sure. A couple, if I were to pull the curtain back, right? And by the way, I don't think it's as mysterious as a lot of people think. I think if I were giving advice to people on, how to show up um when they're going in for those interviews, I would start by saying preparation counts. It really does, right? If you've done your homework on an organization, the leaders that you're likely to meet, you've come up with some good questions, you're showing that curiosity, that goes a long way. I think people knowing what their brand is all about is important. If you show up and you sort of pretend that you're all things for all people and that every environment is right for you, I think that's actually frowned upon, right? I think it's also, some of it is real basic stuff, Rachel, right? It's kind of remembering what our parents told us when we're showing up in any setting. Be on time, right? Dress the parts. Be kind to the receptionist. We've all heard that story, right? You know, show energy and curiosity, and if you're in this video world, it's keep it professional, right? I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed people where there's activity behind them, right? Whether it's a dog or a cat or a little kid running around, and you've got to invest the time in showing up right, because you typically will not get a second
Yeah,
chance at that, right?
agree.
Um, so
Love that. So, have you ever advised a client to not hire a candidate after they've kind of gone through that and they're like, I want this guy?
yes is the quick answer. It's a tough kind of look yourself in the mirror moment, right? Because you know, uh, if candidate's done well and the client's ready to move them forward, sometimes they're at the finish line and they're thinking that's the one they need to hire, and we've got either data, and sometimes that comes through referencing. Sometimes that just is that thing gnawing in our gut that says there's something off here. Um, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. So absolutely, we've had to tell clients we think this would be a mistake. Um, and and part of this is us. If I look at it selfishly, I don't want to place somebody that within 3 6 months is going to implode. Right? It's going to certainly damage the relationship I have with that client. It's probably going to mean that we've got to repeat the search and start from scratch. So we don't want that. We also have a vested interest in our clients being successful. So it does happen. I mean, we it's almost you develop this sixth sense sometimes when you're able to tell when somebody is truly interested and truly committed to make something work, right? Uh, there's definitely an element of window shopping sometimes with people where they're just trying to understand what their value is. They may be convincing themselves that they need to make a change when all's said and done, that may not be what they actually want, right? It's kind of that be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. We can pick up on those things. We can pick up on, if we're reminded more than a couple times by the candidate that, hey, I need to get spend some time with my spouse and talk this through, and I'm not sure, and this is going to be difficult. We've got kids that we would have to uproot, and there's those little tingly things that go off when you see that. And it's in those situations more about telling the client, hey, this isn't a slam dunk, right? There's definitely some hesitancy. There's some signs. One of the things that people have to realize, and I think most of us do, these decisions are very emotional decisions. They're very personal decisions for people. It's not as black and white as we might think, right? And so there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes around the dinner table, right? That we can't be aware of, and we certainly can't control. And so when those pop up, we're looking to make sure our clients recognize that as well. There's a tendency for some tunnel vision, especially when you get towards the finish line with somebody that, yeah, you've really fallen in love with, and you convince
Yes.
yourself that it's a done deal, and you're not quite there. I like to say it's not over till the butt's in the seat, right?
It's the truth. That's the
Yeah.
truth. Is there a story that you wish you could tell that you've just never been able to about a search?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I'll give you one, and obviously I am not comfortable, nor should I share the name of the company, but I'll tell
No,
you.
no names.
Yeah,
Yes.
no name. So this is relatively recent, probably in the last 5 years. A search that I conducted for a major retail apparel company. Right, we'd all know the brand if I shared it. Um, and this company was private equity owned, and we do a lot of work in the private equity space. And we had started the search, and things were going well. We had a short list of candidates, and everybody was happy. The private equity firm was happy with the candidates we were showing. The CEO was happy. Well, private equity operating partner, who was also a board member for the company, calls me up and says, I'm going to share something with you. I need you to keep it quiet, but we are removing the CEO. And we're going to fire the CEO. We're likely replacing that person with somebody internally. I need you to continue the search as if nothing's going to happen, right? An incredibly awkward position to be put in. But at the end of the day, they're the client. So we, for I think it was 2+ weeks, continued the search with the lame duck CEO, if you will, who we knew was unfortunately going to be terminated. And then eventually were introduced even before official word had gotten out, introduced to the replacement CEO. So that was a tough one, right? I mean, it goes to, you know, I've got my own set of values that are important, and it was probably one of the more uncomfortable positions I've been put in because I really liked the CEO. They were a good person, and they just didn't align with taking the business the direction that the private equity owners will take it. At the end of the day, all worked out fine. The new CEO is terrific. We're able to help them find the right person, and we've maintained the relationship with the prior CEO. But
Oh, good. That's nice.
plenty of interesting stories.
Oh,
I've often said I could write a book with some of the interesting things that go on in this business for sure.
I bet you could.
Yeah.
And it also brings up kind of that environmental fit, that cultural fit, right? That you were talking about earlier. I mean, the CEO was a great guy and human and it just wasn't the right fit in the direction with where the private equity wanted to go,
Totally, and I'll
right?
correct you, it was a woman, a female
Oh,
CEO, yeah, so, but yes, outstanding, accomplished business person, but at times there
yeah.
that fit is not right, there's some misalignment that occurred, right?
Mhm.
Could we have helped if we had been the person to place that CEO, avoid that misalignment on the front end? Yeah, perhaps with some of the tools that I've talked about, but
Yeah.
it's not an exact science that we do for sure, but we're trying to certainly make it closer to that than historically executive search has been.
So, if we kind of go into myth busting then a little bit,
Hmm.
where do you think executives typically misunderstand working with a search firm? I heard you talk a little bit about some of the transactional elements.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I love how consultative because my assumption is some of them just expect that there's some order taking. Like, "Go
yeah,
get me a CHRO." My
yeah, yeah. Sure, go pull it off the shelf for me, right?
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, there's certainly plenty of myths
Mhm.
it's probably our fault as much as it may be the candidates that we don't do a good enough job of explaining, how we do show up in the marketplace. You said it. We are, I think, transaction is sort of a bad word in my vocabulary as it relates to my profession, right? If we're just transacting for a client, then we're not bringing the value that they deserve given the fees that they're paying us, right? So we are truly
Yeah.
management consultants. Our area of expertise is talent. I would say probably 70% of the conversations that I have with clients have absolutely nothing to do with, hey, Mike, I need your help finding somebody. It is me helping them to stay up to speed on market trends. What are their competitors
Mhm.
doing? What are the best practices? Um, what are the benchmarks? Hey, I'm struggling with, this particular challenge. Maybe it's a team dynamic situation. Maybe it's a, we're not compensating in a good way
Mhm.
or competitive way. Can you help us think through that? So we are management consultants. I think that's important for people to understand. And so don't expect that when you come to us that we're just about, yeah, I can look at your resume, you're either a fit or
Yeah.
you're not a fit, right? The other thing is, this is going to sound maybe a little shrewd, if not arrogant. The company pays our bills, right? I mean, the client's company are the ones that have retained us, and we
Mhm.
take that very seriously, right?
Mm.
A typical retained executive search is a third of the first year's compensation. Those can be very big numbers, right? We're
Right.
charging them the moment we sign that agreement. We're charging them one third of that anticipated fee. Our typical standard sort of fee structure is the next third of that fee gets charged to them 30 days later, and then the final third 30 days after that. So within 2 months, they're paying us a significant amount of money to represent them on a particular search project. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we're ever going to be successful without investing enough time in meeting great candidates, but we have to make sure there's that balance, right? So if I were to tell candidates out there who may, especially in a sluggish, a slower market, which we um, are for the most part still today in a fairly slow market, especially in certain sectors and functions, Um, I
Mhm.
I I get countless emails, phone calls from people asking if I can spend some time with them and help them think through their search. And I try to do that as often as possible, but I could easily fill every hour of my day with those kinds of meet and greets, right? And
Absolutely.
so I want people to understand it's not about ignoring them, and we don't value getting to know them, but we also have to prioritize if we're working on projects what we're doing for the client, right? And if somebody's in touch with us and we're real busy on a couple searches and they're not the right profile for those searches, we may need to put that conversation off a little bit, right? Or delegate it down to
Absolutely.
somebody on the team. So I think it's important to understand that.
What advice would you give those candidates, right? The people who
Yeah.
are trying to engage or want some advice? Because you know what? We'll make this a short and you can send it to them. Like, what would you tell
Yeah.
them?
The flip side of what I've just said, and it might sound like I'm contradicting myself, is I can't tell you how many times I end up filling a search with a candidate who's reached out to me, usually on email, and they sent a nice note with their resume, and they said, "Hey, I'm in the market. I'd love for you to keep me on your radar. I'd love to spend a few minutes with you to tell you what I'm looking for." Those emails, a lot of times, they just coincidentally will come in when that person may be a perfect candidate for a search that I'm working on, right? So, I think I've got probably a recent example where I just filled, and it's not announced yet who it is, but the new chief people officer for the vitamin shop. The vitamin shop, as you likely know, right? Retailer, although they're pushing hard into the digital commerce space as well. That was hey, I just left the organization that I'm at, and I'm back in the market and want to get on your radar kind of moment. Um, we invest a lot of time and energy into the research, market mapping, market analysis stuff. We've got an outstanding research team that does that work, but in this particular case, the person that ended up getting the offer is somebody that just had reached out, right? So I would encourage people to do that. I do think email is often better
Yeah.
than trying to pick up the phone, because then I've got a sort of written record, if you will, of
Mhm.
kind of what they're looking for, and typically the resume being attached. And I would say be specific about what your criteria are, right? What your requirements are. Let us know if you're open to relocating, because it's becoming more prevalent again, right? Where our clients are insisting on somebody being in the office.
Right.
Not all the time, but it is certainly become more common. Um, Let us know if you're open to broader industries than you may have historically been in. If you're looking for that, C-level job, or if you'd be open to, division level or geographic leadership level roles in larger companies. So give us sort of the facts up front, and know that if you're doing that, hopefully, and I always reply to anybody that's going to email me, but even if you don't get that quick meeting, know that you're kind of in the system, right? I mean, we as all search firms invest a good deal in kind of platforms, the CRMs, if you will, that they use to sort of keep track of who's out there, right?
Right. Mhm. Yeah, it's very true. Is there a right way to just also stay on that radar? Is it like a email
Yeah.
every other month?
It's a great question. I don't mind every month. I mean, every other month is fine too, as a quick check-in. I get them all the time, and it's actually a great idea because, everybody's inbox, keeps piling up, and if and again, we have, don't get me wrong, I'm not working out of my email box to find my candidates, right? We have a database. It's very sophisticated. It's driven by machine learning and AI, so it can help us get to the people quickly. But if you're checking in and saying, "Hey, Mike, it's Rachel. I'm just checking in. We haven't talked in a month or so, and I just want to follow up and see if anything is popped up." Absolutely a good idea, right? Because we're always going to have new projects that come up, and if you're sort of top of mind, because you've reached back out, great. Now, do I think you should be checking in every week? Probably not. I think, but every, if I make a habit of going back into my inbox, really on a daily basis, and sort of making sure that I'm not forgetting about something or somebody that might have been in touch 3 weeks ago. That's, for me, a regular practice. The other thing I would encourage people to use us for, is let us be a sounding board, right? Let us help you think through opportunities that you have, right? Perhaps you've got an offer, perhaps you're getting close to an offer, and it may be with a company that you haven't worked with us on the search. There's some value to that because if we're clearly going to come at that situation very objectively. If we're not the one representing you and representing the client, we can help you think through, does this make sense or not, right? Um, the other thing, and this is, again, this may sound a little self serving, but it's a two-way street, right? And so we pay our bills by bringing search work in. And so if a candidate feels like they've had a great experience with us as a candidate, we're really hopeful that they're not going to forget us when they need to make changes on their team, right? Quite frankly, and that's important. And there's nothing more frustrating than sort of being ghosted by somebody who you were very helpful to when they were on the beach looking for their next job, and then you can't get in touch with them. Don't make the automatic assumption that any time Mike Bergen or another search consultant calls that they're trying to get business from you. It may be to just check in and see how things are going in the new role, and just that, right? I have plenty of conversations with people, and I have friendships that have been built up over the years where I haven't received a search from them in 10, 15 years, but I still make a practice of checking in to make sure that they're doing well.
Yeah, well, and there's a real consultative lens to what you're
Yeah.
saying, and I think that's a real misconception too, right? I think I've even seen candidates really approach this very transactionally, and I don't know that they think even if it's like, "Oh, hey, Mike, saw this new technology you might be interested in." I mean,
Yeah.
there could be just a lot of ways to support people in different ways. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Mhm.
Yep.
Really good point. And so I was gonna ask you, are there any other unwritten rules? But I think that's actually a good one, right? Like, there is a partnership in this, and, how do you show up and be a good partner when you aren't always, in need, or
Yeah.
whether it's for a role or as a candidate?
It's a partnership is just that, right? It's got to be two ways, for sure. The other, I this is, maybe behind the curtain, and it's perhaps an assumption that people make that I don't think is correct, and that is, there are different kinds of search firms, right? We are what I would call a mid tier firm. We're probably not probably we are in the top 15 from a revenue perspective, right? Um, however, um, a lot of people, especially when they get to that very senior executive level, assume that, well, I should be going to one of the five biggest firms, which we in our industry call the Shrek firms, right? The Shrek firms because the first initials, it's Spencer Stewart, it's Heydrich, it's Russell Reynolds, it's Egon Zehnder, and it's Korn Ferry. Those are the five biggest. The five biggest from a revenue perspective doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best for you to work with, right? You might have great success with a specialty firm that just focuses in your particular function or your particular industry. Now we're a generalist firm, but we're made up of probably 80% of our partners globally have worked at the larger Shrek firms and made a conscious decision to leave those so that we can be a little more high touch, so that we're not in a crowded space where we've got eight other partners doing searches just like us, and we have to get in line behind other people before we can talk to certain candidates because they're already put up for a different search, where we don't have access into certain companies to try and pull people out because they're hands off for that organization. And I'm not trying to badmouth the larger firms. I was a senior partner at Korn Ferry, but prior to that, I had my own firm, which was a specialty firm just focused in human resources search, and ultimately sold out and moved to Korn Ferry. So, just the message to people, I think, is be willing to sort of ask around, do your research, see if there are specialists that you can be partnering up with that may be better suited for helping you find that next role.
And, that's a really good like, we even met because your name was given to me by one of your competitors, and they were like, "Mike is great, he's one of the best," right? And, so I think that's a really good point, right?
Remind
Call
me
those
to
out.
send that person a bottle of wine or something, right? Now it's really important, right? Because I am so quick to tell a candidate, "Hey, I wish I had something for you because I think you're amazing. I don't right now, but I'd be more than happy to refer you to people that I respect that are, call them my competitors, but they're really more than that. They're people that help make this industry better at what we do. So I think
Collaborators in many ways, yeah.
everybody should
Mhm.
have in our profession should have the confidence and the willingness to do that. And don't be afraid to ask us, right? Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, Mike, thanks so much. Great to connect. Thank you for keeping me on your radar. Is there anybody else in your industry I should be talking to?" And I will, in a heartbeat, introduce you to two, three, four other search professionals that I respect.
My last question for you is there anything about Kingsley Gate that kind of, is this unique lens that you want us to know about you or Kingsley Gate? But I feel like you've peppered that through also, you
Yeah.
know, this whole conversation, the consultative practice that you guys are doing it differently. I think has always been really apparent to me. But is there anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't want to make it a commercial, but I truly in my at my core believe that we're onto something here, right? There's a reason why
Yeah,
I left, you know, the largest search firm in the world, and ultimately ended up here. I think that our focus on blending technology and science, like I'll call that decision making profile tool that we use, science as much as anything, right? Blending those into the traditional search process, doing so with a high touch approach, makes us unique and different, right? We 3.5 years ago now, almost 4 years ago, attracted a private equity firm that invested in us because of that different approach we're taking, and it's been an
nice.
amazing partnership with them. But yeah, but we're not the only good firm out there. There are plenty of terrific firms and people within those firms that you'll find.
There are. Well, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you just sharing. This has been so rich. I know our
Yeah,
audience is
thank
gonna get
you.
a lot out of it, and, thank
I
you very
I
much for
absolutely. I hope people do get something out of this, and I welcome hearing from any of your audience members. Rachel, I think what you're doing is
awesome.
amazing for the profession, and I appreciate you making me a part of it.
Oh, well, thank you. It's all about helping people navigate this new future of work and where we're gonna get there. So thanks for being here with us.
Oh, you got it. All right. Have a wonderful day.
So thanks for listening today, friends. And to everyone tuning in, remember, the world of work is changing faster than ever, but with the right mindset and insights, you can navigate this without skipping a beat. This is the Shift Show, and I'm Rachel Bourne.